So we had done till the cutaneous part, and we had done the sphincters also. So the sphincters, as we knew, were divided into superficial, or you can say subcutaneous, superficial and deep parts. So if you see these parts, I'll show you. This is the deep part of the external anal sphincter. This is the superficial part of the external anal sphincter, and this is the subcutaneous part of the external anal sphincter. So what we studied, that the uppermost fibers blend with the fibers of the puborectalis. Anteriorly, some fibers decussate with superficial transverse perineal muscle, and posterior fibers get attached to the anococcygeal raphe. So we can see here that they said that the upper fibers, this is the external anal sphincter, so just beneath the skin, and so the deep part of the external anal sphincter, or the upper part of the anal sphincter, it usually blends with the puborectalis. Puborectalis comes from here, so it usually blends with it, but some of it anterior fibers, like anterior fibers of this particular part, they blend with the deep transversus, like superficial transversus perineal muscle. It was written that some of its fibers decussate with the superficial transversus perineal muscle. So here these fibers, they decussate with the superficial transversus perineal muscle, and some of its posterior fibers, they join the anococcygeal ligament or the anococcygeal raphe on the back side. All right, the next fibers were the middle fibers. So the middle fibers, they lie just outside the internal anal sphincter, just outside the internal anal sphincter. So what was written about them? The middle fiber surrounds the lower part of the internal anal sphincter. These are attached to the perineal body anteriorly and to the coccyx via anococcygeal ligament posteriorly. Some fibers of each side decussate to form the commissure in the midline. So these are attached simply to the perineal body anteriorly and to the coccyx via anococcygeal ligament. So these are the middle fibers, or the superficial part of the external anal sphincter, that lies just parallel to the internal anal sphincter. And this is the subcutaneous part of the external anal sphincter, that lies just below the internal anal sphincter. They were just around the lower part of the internal anal sphincter. This is the upper part of the internal anal sphincter, and upper part of the external anal sphincter lies near it, and the lower part of the internal anal sphincter, just close to it lies the middle part or the superficial part of the external anal sphincter, and the subcutaneous or the lower part of the external anal sphincter just lies below the internal anal sphincter. So the lower fibers lies below the level of the internal anal sphincter and are separated from anal epithelium by the submucosa. So all these fibers are now understood. This is the upper part or the deep part. This is the superficial part, deep, superficial, and the subcutaneous part. This is the subcutaneous part. Now comes the conjoint longitudinal coat. So what is conjoint longitudinal coat? It is formed by the fusion of the puborectalis with the longitudinal muscle coat of the rectum at the anorectal junction. So it lies between the external and the internal sphincters. So when this puborectalis, it blends with the outer longitudinal coat. This is the outer longitudinal coat, muscle coat of the rectum. When this blends with this outer longitudinal coat, this part is known as the conjoint tendon. I'll show you the diagram again. This is the conjoint longitudinal coat. The puborectalis comes from here. It blends with this longitudinal coat of the rectum, and together they form the conjoint longitudinal coat. Now, next is the anorectal ring. Now, what is anorectal ring? This is a muscular ring present at the anorectal junction. So, this is the muscular ring present at the anorectal junction. So, where is the anorectal junction? This is the anorectal junction. So, this is the muscular ring around this junction, which is known as the anorectal ring. It is formed by the fusion of the puborectalis, uppermost fibers of the external sphincters and the internal sphincters. It is easily felt by the finger in the anal canal. Surgical division of the ring results in rectal incontinence. The ring is less marked anteriorly where the fibers of the puborectalis are absent. So you just need to know, so this is the muscular ring around the anorectal junction, and it is formed by the fusion of puborectalis, uppermost fibers of the external sphincter and the internal sphincter. So you can see here somewhere, this is the anorectal ring. So puborectalis, upper part of the internal sphincter, external sphincter. So it is formed by the fusion of these muscles. So I already told you this is the section of it, and the anal canal rectum is a round thing. So all these muscles etc. are going round like this. So they are formed by the fusion of these three, this and this part. They form the ring out here, a muscular ring at the anorectal. This is the rectum, this is the anal canal starting. So at this junction the anorectal ring is formed. Now, surgical spaces related to the anal canal: the ischio-anal space, the perianal space, and the submucous space. So I'll show you the submucous space first. Submucous space of the anal canal lies above the white line between the mucous membrane and the internal sphincter. It contains the internal rectal venous plexus and the lymphatics. So you can see here, this is the submucous space, and it is containing the internal rectal venous plexus. I'll show you. This is the submucous space. This part is the submucous space above the white line. It is above the white line, and this part is the submucous space, and it contains all these internal venous plexus out here. This whole section is shown in this diagram also. This is the submucous space. Then comes the ischio-anal space and the perianal space. So you can see the perianal space surrounds the anal canal below the white line. It contains the lower fibers of the external sphincter, external rectal venous plexus, and the terminal branch of the inferior rectal vessels and the nerves. Pus in the space tends to spread to the anal canal at the white line or to the surface of the perineal skin rather than to the ischio-anal space. So you can see this is the perineal space. This is the anal canal. Here just close to the external anal sphincter is the ischio-anal space, which we studied, and below it, just on the lower part of the external anal sphincter, the lower fibers of the external anal sphincter, just close to it is the perineal space. So the pus tends to fill here in this space because it is dependent part. So pus tends to fill here if any abscess is formed. Then comes the arterial supply. So we see the part of the anal canal above the pectinate line is supplied by the superior rectal artery. The part below the pectinate line is supplied by the inferior rectal arteries. So I told you the pectinate line is very important because it is the demarcation of certain supplies. So this is the pectinate line. So above this it is supplied by the superior rectal artery, which is the branch of the mesenteric artery, and below is the part below the pectinate line is supplied by the inferior rectal artery, which is the branch of the internal pudendal artery, and internal pudendal artery is the branch of the internal iliac artery. Then comes the venous drainage. You can see this is the venous drainage. Above the pectinate line, this is the pectinate line. Above the pectinate line, this is the venous drainage. Above the pectinate line, all the veins, they unite together and form the internal rectal venous plexus, which drains into the superior rectal vein, and the superior rectal vein drains into the inferior mesenteric vein, and then this joins the portal circulation. So all the blood of the part of the anal canal above the pectinate line reaches the portal circulation. Below the pectinate line, all the venous drainage goes into the inferior rectal vein, and from the inferior rectal vein to the internal pudendal vein, to the internal iliac, to the common iliac, and to the inferior vena cava. So this is the drainage above the pectinate line and below the pectinate line. So what's written in your book? The internal rectal venous plexus or the hemorrhoidal plexus lies in the submucosa of the anal canal. It drains mainly into the superior rectal vein, as I showed you in the diagram, but communicates freely with the external plexus and thus with the middle and the rectal veins. The internal plexus is therefore an important site of communication between the portal and the systemic circulation or the systemic veins. The internal plexus is in the form of series of dilated pouches connected by transverse branches around the anal canal. Veins present in the 3 anal columns situated at the 3, 7 and 11 o'clock position are seen in the lithotomy position, are large and constitute potential site for the formation of the primary internal piles. So I told you that anal canal is a round structure. So veins present in the anal columns is written here. So what are the anal columns? These are the anal columns. So it is a rounded structure. So if anal canal is a rounded structure, these are the anal columns in it, and in these anal columns only there are some positions of the veins, which is the 11 o'clock, 7 o'clock and 3 o'clock position of the veins in these particular columns, and the veins are situated here, and any pressure in these veins can cause internal piles. Then comes the external rectal venous plexus. This is the external rectal venous plexus outside. So the external rectal venous plexus lies outside the muscular coat of the rectum and the anal canal and communicates freely with the internal plexus. The lower part of the external plexus is drained by the inferior rectal veins, which I already told you in the diagram, then into the internal pudendal veins, the middle part of the middle rectal vein into the internal iliac vein, and the upper part of the superior rectal vein, which continues as the inferior mesenteric vein. You don't have to learn each and everything. The thing I showed you in the diagram, you can learn it like this also. So external rectal venous plexus, the external rectal venous plexus is outside the rectum and the anal canal, and it can, both these are plexuses are communicate with one another. So this is a very good example of portocaval anastomosis, because the upper part, it drains into the portal system and then there's a communication between the systemic circulation and the portal circulation, like this. Then comes the lymphatic drainage. So above the pectinate line, the lymph drains into the pre-aortic lymph nodes and into the internal iliac nodes. Below the pectinate line, into the superficial inguinal lymph nodes. You can see the diagram of these nodes in the rectum. I taught you there. So you can see the diagrams of these nodes in the rectum. Then comes the nerve supply. So the nerve supply, above the pectinate line, the anal canal, you can see above the pectinate line, the anal canal is supplied by the autonomic nerves, both sympathetic and parasympathetic, and they also supply the internal anal sphincter, and this is insensitive to pain. So here in your book it is written pain sensations are carried by both of them. This is wrong. This is insensitive to pain. This is sensitive only to stretch and distension. Okay, and below the pectinate line, it is supplied by the inferior rectal nerves, which also supplies the external anal sphincter, and this is sensitive to pain, sensitive to pain and touch, temperature, etc. So this is wrong, so you just don't learn this. The part above the pectinate line is supplied by these nerves, which are insensitive to pain and only sensitive to stretch, distension, and below the pectinate line they are sensitive to pain, temperature, pressure, etc. So this is all about the anal canal, and if you don't understand anything you can ask me.